If anyone's out there, this might be my last message. My name is Elia Marks, lead scientist aboard the Aurora 7. We were sent to test the limits of human life beyond Earth. But nothing could have prepared me for this. Jack is gone. It's been 29 days since we lost contact with Command. And I'm not alone here anymore. This isn't isolation, and it's not delusion. There's something else, something vast, older than time. Titan listens when I think. Since the landing, I've been having these visions. Places folding into themselves. Languages, I don't know. But somehow understand. And at times, I see my reflection looking back at me. Like it knows I don't belong. I have to say this now, before my thoughts scatter, before I forget who I am. This message, it isn't a distress call. It's a warning we pushed too far. And now, something has awakened. This is Elia Marks, final log of the Aurora 7 mission. Voice of Commander Ruiz, steady and calm. The Prometheus mission wasn't just an idea. It was an answer to a cry, the cry of Earth, suffocating under its own weight, pushed to its limits. When the planet began showing signs of irreversible exhaustion, we had no choice but to act. Humanity needed a new home. The Aurora 7 mission was our greatest gamble. Over 30 scientists aboard, its destination was clear. Titan, the attempt to establish a permanent base, to start anew. But as we all know, history doesn't follow a script. We had no idea what we would find. No mission had ever gone so far, so deep. Our original objective was simple: explore, collect data, test terraforming feasibility. But as time went on, the focus began to shift. The Aurora 7 wasn't just a scientific expedition. It was an existential experiment. Now, we know something was waiting for them there. Elia. She began reporting strange occurrences, visions. Jack became distant, his eyes colder each day. But the mission couldn't stop. And with every discovery, isolation gnawed at us. The last time I heard Elia's voice was before we lost contact. She wasn't the same. Something had changed in her. What they awakened, we don't know. But whatever it is, it's not going to let anyone leave. Voice of Jack tense and uneasy. There was no more doubt. Something was there. In the weeks that followed, as we delved deeper into Titan's data, the anomalies started to pile up. At first, it was just faint noises, almost imperceptible. Then the signals began to appear. Elia kept insisting it was just a system glitch. But what I saw on the screen couldn't be ignored. Titan's atmospheric composition was changing, as if something was responding to our signals. We tried to make contact. Nothing. It was a paradox. How could something so far, so isolated, be responding to us? I didn't know whether to fear it or celebrate it. The sensors picked up a fluctuation in gravitational waves, an unusual frequency. The shockwave passed through the base, but no one seemed to understand where it was coming from. Elia was absorbed, completely lost in the idea of connection. But Jack couldn't hide his anxiety anymore. His eyes were constantly on alert. At any moment, he felt something was lurking. And then, the impossible happened. A message appeared on the panel, but it wasn't from us. It was from something that was there, with a code that even the most advanced algorithms couldn't decipher. It was a simple message, but an omen. The last thing I heard was, "You are not alone." Voice of Elia, suspenseful and resolute. There was no turning back. Every piece of data, every anomaly that appeared in the last days showed me something more. Something that couldn't be ignored. Whatever was on Titan, it wasn't just watching. It was acting. Jack hesitated, but my determination was growing. Something inside me told me we were about to touch the beginning of something far greater than us. But I knew that this path could be our last. There was a code, a pattern, repeating itself. It wasn't just a system glitch. It wasn't just an error. It was a response, and with each attempt we made to decipher it, the signals grew stronger. Jack stepped back. He knew there was no room for indecision anymore. There was something in his expression, something telling him to pull away. But I couldn't. Not now. It was too late. The decision was made. The code was sent. And what came after? No one could have imagined. The last thing we saw was the glow of a response. And then, everything went dark. Voice of Elia, calm yet full of angst. We didn't expect this. What followed after the message was sent. It was more than just a response. It was a presence. I felt it with every fiber of my being, that the entity was closer. It wasn't just a code or a glitch in the system. It was something alive. Jack looked at me, his pale face reflecting the same sense of despair. He knew this moment was coming. The truth was within our reach. And then we saw it. The lab door opened, revealing a figure that didn't belong to this world. It was like a shadow, but with clear outlines, as if space itself was distorted around it. It approached. Its words echoed inside our minds, not audibly, but as an intuition. You should have stopped. Now, there's no turning back. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The creature was right before us, more real than either of us could have ever imagined. And somehow, I knew our mission was about to come to an end. All that was left was emptiness. Voice of Elia, exhausted yet determined. The explosion. Was it the end? We don't know. But what remained after that was emptiness. The entity was gone. Or perhaps it left a part of itself here with us. Jack and I were alone, immersed in the stillness. The lab was in ruins, but there were still signs, traces of something that challenged us to understand. I searched for answers in every corner of the room, but there was something more, something that transcended reason. It was no longer a scientific mission. Now it was a quest for the truth, and the truth was right in front of us. I saw a dim glow coming from the control table, as if one last message was being transmitted. I hooked up the cables and was greeted by a hologram. It wasn't just a simple recording. Mysterious voice. You don't understand. The end is only the beginning. The cycle always repeats. And what you sought here won't be what you expect. The real test is yet to come. The message ended abruptly. Jack looked at me, his eyes filled with confusion and dread. He knew that this wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of something much bigger. I turned to him with an unwavering certainty. We hadn't failed. We had only just begun to understand what was really happening. And so, the true mission began. Voice of Elia, in a decisive tone. It was hard to believe. After everything we'd been through, there was still a road ahead. The true mission. It began here, outside the lab, in the unknown. I looked at Jack. His eyes were hollow, as if still processing everything that had happened. But there was one thing neither of us could deny. Whatever we'd faced in the lab, it wasn't the end. It was just a part of something bigger. Much bigger. We knew there was more, something on Titan that was watching us. Something that transcended our understanding. And as we ventured into the outer zone of the station, the feeling that we weren't alone grew stronger. Distorted radio voice. Unknown voice. You Urha. Don't understand what you're up against. The voice, distant and incomprehensible, echoed in our ears. But we didn't stop. It couldn't be mere coincidence. Something was calling us, guiding us toward what seemed like the center of it all. The pressure grew as we neared the epicenter of activity. The storm was close, the wind picking up, and the ground trembled beneath our feet. Jack came closer to me. With a serious look, we knew that, once again, the choice was before us. Continue or retreat. But after everything we'd seen, there was no turning back. Voice of Elia in a firm tone. We moved forward. There were no more doubts. The unknown would no longer be an obstacle. It was the only way to understand what had really happened, and the door was open. What we found out there, no one could have predicted. Voice of Elia in a tense tone. What we were about to uncover was not something we could control, whatever we were facing. Now it was at our doorstep. The lab was there, impossible to ignore. The structure that stood before us had no logical explanation, but it was real. And now, everything led up to it. Jack seemed transfixed. His hands trembled and his eyes were fixed, as if the answer to our mission lay within those walls. But it wasn't just science. It wasn't just technology. Something beyond was present, and he knew it. The entrance to the control center was open. But as we crossed the threshold, we felt an instant pressure, as if time on Titan had been altered, distorted. Distorted radio, voice, unknown voice. The cycle repeats. The future is inevitable, whatever this was. It was within the system, within us. Jack in a challenging tone. And now? What do we do? Whatever it was already beyond our understanding. The system had been altered, and our mission, which had seemed so clear at first, now had a much deeper meaning. Voice of Elia decisive. There's no turning back. We need to solve this. The only way to understand what happened is to accept. Accept that the unknown is not our enemy. It has always been with us. And then, the answer came. It wasn't anything grand or dramatic, but finally, everything made sense. Our work was done. What remained was to go back, and with that, the truth was finally revealed.